Hey guys, it's Diane. I realized I haven't done a wrap up in a few months, mostly because I really haven't been finishing that much for the past few months. I read 3 books in November, 2 books in December, and 4 books in January. So, not really enough to do a wrap up every single month. So, I figured today we just do all 3 months together: November, December, and January. I think for the most part, these are new releases. I do have a couple older books that I read in January, but most of these came out around the end of last year or the beginning of this year, and a few of them I have done dedicated review videos for, so I'll link any of those in the description if you're interested in hearing more of what I thought about them. But without further ado, let's get into what I read, starting with November. The first book I read in November was The Princess of Thornwood Drive by Kelly and Moreau. This is a debut novel following 2 sisters, and it alternates between the 2 sisters and also between contemporary and fantasy. The older sister is the one taking care of her younger sister and working and trying to keep things afloat. A year before the story starts, their parents were killed in a car accident, and that accident left the younger sister primarily paralyzed and nonverbal. She does have some movement and a little bit of speech, but not really, nothing coherent, nothing that she can do anything for herself. And the younger sister, in her point of view, she is living in a fantasy world. She is a princess, and their parents were kidnapped a year prior, and she was cursed, which is why she can't communicate with anyone. I really like this. I thought it was interesting. The plot continues moving forward as we switch between the 2 sisters. So they're living their lives for the most part together, even though their realities are very much divided. And we see the older sister doing her best to take care of her younger sister. She's really struggling, but she also doesn't want to give up on her sister and just send her off somewhere, even though that may end up being the best thing for her. And the younger sister simultaneously is somewhat aware of things happening in the real world. She just has this sort of fantasy filter on everything, and she's also trying to look out for her older sister. It's just much more difficult for her to do anything with her situation, and I thought this was a really interesting story to see the 2 sisters and their bond with one another and how much they actually cared for one another, even though they couldn't really convey that because of the situation they were in. And I thought it was a really unique way to tell a story and show that second point of view. The next book I read in November is System Collapse by Martha Wells. This is the 7th book in the Murderbot Diaries. And in this book, we basically pick up right where Network Effect left off. So if you read that book, this is pretty much the second half of what was going on there. I really like this story, and I just like a Murderbot in general. So I feel like if you like Murderbot, you're probably going to like this. But I mostly just like Murderbot as a character. I like spending time with that character and the group of humans and non-humans that it has picked up along the way as friends and seeing what situations they're in. So, I mean, this is book 7 in the series. None of them are too different from one another, I don't think, but I just am still enjoying them. I do think it is helpful to maybe have a little refresher in what happened in Network Effect before you go into this one. But in this, we see Murderbot dealing with much more difficult feelings, kind of processing trauma for the first time, which is interesting to see. I have enjoyed seeing this character grow and change, and even though it's not a human with real feelings, trying to learn about feelings and relationships and things like that. So I don't think there's too much to say about this. If you know Murderbot, you kind of know what you're in for with this one, and I'm still enjoying the series. And the last book I finished in November is Before We Say Goodbye by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is the 4th book in Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And in this one, most of the stories, this is pretty much more of the same. Again, if you've read this series, you kind of know what you're in for it. It's this cafe where patrons can come and they can go back in time, but there are certain rules they have to follow. They have to be visiting someone who has been to the cafe, they have to sit in a specific seat, and they only have as long as it takes a cup of coffee to get cold for their visit. And the idea is people come to talk with someone who they have lost in one way or another, whether they've moved far away or they've passed away, and they just want to see them one last time. They can also only do this one time. So in this one, we have 4 people who all of their stories have something to do with regret. They regret either the last time they saw someone or something that they did or didn't do, and they want one chance to kind of try and make that right, try and make up for whatever thing it is that they're regretting. We do get a story featuring a dog, which is something new for this series, having an animal that someone is trying to visit, and then the other ones are people that they've lost. I think this is a series that could maybe feel like more of the same, but I think the appeal of continuing to read this is that each situation is kind of unique. They're not similar relationships or similar situations of why someone wants to speak to someone again. So I think it's interesting to see which books may have stories that resonate more with someone than a different story. Like, there are certain situations that I relate to much more than others, and some that I'm like, I've never really experienced that, but it's an interesting topic to explore and see why people might want to visit someone one last time, what they would hope to get out of it, if they want to say something or ask them something. I just think it's an interesting question to explore, and I like that each situation is unique. And they do oftentimes, although there is kind of an overarching story within the cafe itself, because we see some characters come back and the cafe staff is always the same. I think a lot of these could also just be read as individual stories, especially where the rules are explained pretty much in each one. That part does get a bit repetitive if you're reading all of the books, especially if you're reading all of the books close together. But I just think it's an interesting topic, and I like the way it's written, and I'm probably going to keep reading it. I know there's at least one more coming out. So I've definitely liked some more than others, but I'm not tired of it yet. Then in December, I read The Ghosts of Beatrice Bird by Louisa Morgan. This is a story about a woman who, all of her life, she has seen what she calls ghosts. They're not really ghosts and like the spirits of people who have passed, but just people's ghosts, things that cling to people, their negative feelings, and whatever thing that they're carrying around with them. She's always been able to sense that, and then we learn how she came to visibly see them and where it has just gotten way too overwhelming for her. She now sees them everywhere on everyone, and she has escaped to this island. She bought this small house that she's never seen on this island that's mostly only inhabited by nuns. So she goes there to escape and just takes some time to try and figure out hopefully how to stop seeing the ghosts, or at least stop letting it affect her so much. And this young woman shows up on the island, misses the last ferry back, and the nuns ask if she can take her in and let her stay in her guest room, at least until morning when she can take the next ferry home. And these 2 women end up spending the whole night telling each other their stories and bonding with one another. And Beatrice decides she's going to help this woman. She's going to let her stay with her indefinitely, and they can hopefully help one another and figure out how to help Beatrice and how to help this young woman in her situation, because she has fled from her husband and has a young son that she has left behind. Honestly, most of the story is just the women sitting in front of a fire telling each other about their lives and their specific situations, this very difficult home life, and then this seeing ghosts everywhere and how that came about. And I just thought it was really interesting. It's not particularly exciting. There is some more excitement towards the end. Things kind of pick up for the climax, but most of the story is just them talking. One of the nuns comes to visit and she also talks to them. So I don't think there's anything too thrilling throughout most of the story, but I just thought it was really well written, and I really liked hearing about these 2 women and seeing how they're sharing things and processing things with one another, and eventually finding out how they kind of come to terms with what they're dealing with and face it eventually. So definitely an unusual ghost story from what I normally see, but one that I definitely enjoyed. And the other book I read in December is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I liked the beginning of this one, but I didn't really like where it went. This follows a woman who is keeping a journal. We're reading the story through her journal entries, and she is part of an expedition of 4 women who are going to this place called Area X, and it's this mysterious place they keep sending expeditions to. The first one said that they found like a paradise basically, and then every expedition since then something really horrible has happened. The people have either killed themselves or killed each other or just died really horrific deaths. And this is now the 12th expedition, and it starts out really interesting. The place is really creepy as we see them kind of figure out that the place is affecting the people on this expedition, and they don't really trust one another or what they've been told. There's a lot of suspicion and just kind of exploring this sort of creepy place, very mysterious. And eventually we pretty much figure out what's going on there, at least to some extent. It's not fully explained. This is the first in a series, but the main character's husband was on the previous expedition, so we start getting flashbacks and mentions of him and things that happened after he returned from the expedition, and how he just never really seemed the same, and just trying to piece together what's going on by reflecting on what she knew of her husband's time there. And I felt like we kind of lingered on those bits too long. It becomes important eventually in the story, but I don't think it was that important that we needed to spend that much time on it. I think it kind of took me out of exploring Area X and the mystery surrounding the place, spending all this time on her past and just talking about her husband. So kind of creepy, kind of weird. It was interesting, but I didn't really love it. I didn't really connect with it. I kind of lost my connection to the story as things progressed and unfolded. So this one was fine, I guess. I'm definitely not going to be continuing the series, but I liked the idea behind it. Then in January, I read Double Star by Robert A. Heinlein. This follows a down on his luck actor who is in a bar, and he is approached by a man who offers him a role playing a politician, impersonating a politician on Mars. So he has to travel to Mars. He winds up accepting under certain terms, and they take him to Mars, and he finds out that the politician has been kidnapped, and they're trying to cover it up until they can hopefully get him back safely. They just don't want anyone to know because relations with the Martians are very delicate, and they don't want them to find out that their politician is gone. So he takes on the role of this politician and has to pretend to be him. I didn't like the actor. I just don't like him at the beginning. I don't know if you're supposed to. He does change as he takes on this transformation and plays the role of this politician. So I don't know how much you're supposed to like him at the beginning, but I had a really hard time caring about the stakes of how dangerous this actually was to potentially be found out that he is an imposter without caring about him at all. But I did think seeing the overall story and his transformation and how things play out was interesting. So this one was okay. I liked the overarching plot, but I didn't really love a lot of the details. Then I read Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. This is the sequel to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I really enjoyed this book. I liked this even more than the first book. I feel like it built on a lot of what I liked about the first book without feeling repetitive. It was Emily is going on another expedition to this time make a map rather than an encyclopedia. We have Wendell by her side, we now know who he is, and she's trying to help him. They also have a couple new companions. Her dog Shadow is with her, and there's just a lot more characters, a lot more adventure. The fairy nonsense really starts right at the beginning this time because we already know these characters and the magic within this world, so we don't really need to establish quite as much. And we spend more time in the fairy realms. We spend time in another little village getting to know their traditions and beliefs surrounding the fairies, and I thought that was really interesting. And there's just even more magic and nonsense, and I just think this is a really fun series. Emily's gotten a little overconfident being around the fae and the magic at this point, but it gets her into some interesting situations that she has to try and get her way out of. So I'm having a lot of fun with this series. I know there's going to be one more book, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. Then I read The Slain Divine by David Dalglish. This is the third and final installment in the Vagrant Gods trilogy. And this series follows Cyrus, who is the prince of an island nation, and they are, in the first book, invaded by the Everlorn Empire, and they kill his family, kill their god, and basically force everyone to become a part of the empire and accept their religion. A lot of the magic in this world is based in religion and the gods that they believe in and worship, and I think that's a really cool magic system. And we see Cyrus getting taken in by this rebellion where they train him and are hopefully going to become powerful enough as a rebellion to take back the island. In this book, we finally see them come against the Empire and hopefully take back their home. I had a lot of fun with this series. There's a lot of action, there's a lot of characters, a lot of point of view characters, and I really enjoyed all of the points of view. I think they all had interesting personal journeys that they go on of growing and accepting things about their life, things that happen to them throughout the series, but also learning about their family and their home and things like that along the way, and also how they come together as a group. I think we just get a lot of unique characters that all work together in a very interesting way. And I had a lot of fun with this one, going through all of the action. There's a lot of fights in this final book. There's a lot of reveals and twists along the way that all made sense for what was going on, but definitely added something. I had a lot of fun with this one. And the last book I read in January is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. This is the story of Charlie, who has a very low IQ, and he is put into this experimental treatment to hopefully raise his IQ and make him highly intelligent. So in the beginning of the book, we see him going through these experimental treatments, and he ends up being considered successful. His intelligence is growing very rapidly, and then throughout the story, we kind of see him catching up with that. He's suddenly learning a lot very quickly. However, because he's never had the understanding that he has now, not only of learning things, but just of the way the people around him treat him and talk to him, he doesn't really have, at the beginning, any ability to interpret things. So if someone says something, he doesn't really pick up on their tone or maybe an implied intention behind what they're saying. He just hears their words and takes them at face value, and that's kind of how he takes everything. He doesn't pick up on patterns or anything like that. And now he suddenly has all of this understanding and ability to interpret and analyze things, and he's realizing the way his family has been and the way his friends have treated him. And we see him trying to process all of that all at once, basically, because now he's getting memories and reflecting back on his life before he had this high intelligence. So it's kind of a story of him suddenly having this much wider view of the world and who he becomes because of it. I didn't love everything about this story. There are some things some relationships that I feel like we spend too much time on, where I wish we had spent time on other things. But overall, I did really enjoy this. I think it's kind of a weird concept to take someone through this type of journey that Charlie goes on. This is one that I've heard mentioned a lot. I'm glad that I finally read it. I've never really known what it was about. While I didn't love this, I did enjoy it. I thought it was an interesting story. I thought the plot was very interesting. So that is everything that I read for the last 3 months. A little bit of a mixed bag there, but for the most part, I enjoyed everything that I read. Let me know what the best thing you've read recently is. Otherwise, that's all for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.